All right, we're turning now to Sora. Some of you may have seen this. OpenAI released a new video generator. And while it's cool, I guess, you know, a little bit dystopian, what a lot of people are missing are some of the backbones of the US power industry and economy that are behind all of this, which are actually wreaking havoc on all of our lives in a hidden way that a lot of people don't appreciate. So let's go ahead and put this up here on the screen. This is new data that has been released and compiled by Bloomberg over consuming the growing share of electricity the data centers are in individual US states. So stick with me and let's keep this up so I can read to everybody what the overall total electricity consumption is on a state-by-state basis. Virginia, the state where I live, 39% of all power consumption is going to data centers, Ryan. 39%. Bro. Probably all of that is federal government, if I had to guess.
Well,
Amazon and as well, that are all together. But that's an absolutely insane amount of power consumption. The state of Oregon, 33%, Iowa, 18, Nevada, 15, Utah, 15, Nebraska, 14, Arizona, 11, Wyoming, 10, Ohio, 9, Illinois, 7, Georgia, 6, New Jersey, 6, Washington, 6, Texas, 5, North Dakota, 5. I find it incredibly consequential that smaller states like Oregon, Iowa, Nevada, Utah, Nebraska, traditional, more flyover states, especially Iowa through Nebraska, are being used by a lot of these data centers because it shows that they're picking those more rural areas and they're getting their state legislators and their municipalities to actually give them tax breaks to only because their promise is, hey, we're going to create a bunch of jobs, etc. Oh, you know, we're going to pump all this money into the economy. But the way that our power grid works, which is not a horrible idea, is that, hey, we have regulated public power. Based on that, it's a platform through which all of us get to build upon our houses, our businesses, and the costs and the benefits are widely distributed across. It's a floor that the government and our power industry sets so that we can build upon it. And yet, in a scarce power place where we are right now, because we don't have any proper investment or building of nuclear energy. I know you're more of a solar guy. I'm not personally a solar guy. I'm pretty much all in on nuclear. But yeah, I'm all. Regardless, the point is that we don't have a preponderance of power the way that they do in China and in a lot of other places. Even if we were to go all in on oil, we still don't have new oil refineries. We don't have new natural gas rigs. We are in stasis effectively in every state in the country. So in a scarce power world, and in which AI data center usage, power, and investment is a huge chunk of GDP spending, what does that mean? It means that these industries, which have endless amounts of money behind them, come in, build your data center, use an insane amount of electricity. They don't care if the power bill goes up. It does nothing to their bottom line because all of this is fake. None of it is even making any money in the first place. They'll just pay it no matter what. Who's the person for whom a power bill increase is going to affect you? Especially in the more rural areas, the fixed income household, and just general suburban residents. That's why I think it's outrageous to have some 39, 33% in places like Virginia and Oregon, 1/3 to almost 40% of power being consumed by a single industry. We can't be living in the world where everybody else has to absorb all of those increased costs. And it's, again, begs the question, for what? If this was the Manhattan Project, the Tennessee Valley Authority, maybe. Right? Maybe we could all okay, we can all pay a little bit more because this is so important to the country. The Apollo
we're electrifying
program. Yeah, we are electrifying.
America.
There you go.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sections of the Robert Caro books, I think he won a Pulitzer Prize for it. It's in the first book called Path to Power, is a chapter specifically on rural electrification and what it meant to more rural areas in the 1930s. It was a New Deal style program designed by FDR. Johnson used it as a new congressman that was able to bring power to the hill country of Texas. I highly recommend go and at the very least, just read that chapter to understand what that means. That's the level of where, okay, I think we could be okay socializing some of that cost. This? No. All right. And see, that's the issue.
For solar.
Right? For AI generated slop? No. We're not doing that. And yet what we see instead is, instead of thinking about the data centers, what people are starting to think about, and there's a new bill introduced in the state of Ohio, is that the utility companies can automatically adjust a customer thermostat to, quote, reduce the load on the power grid during periods of high demand for the data center. So your house has to be hotter so the data center can crunch Sam Altman slop, okay? Let's take a listen from local news.
A Republican lawmaker at the Ohio State House introduced a bill this week that would allow utility companies to automatically adjust your thermostat at your house. House Bill 427 would create a voluntary demand response program. Customers would be allowed to sign up to let their utility company temporarily adjust energy use, including raising thermostat settings or cycling water heaters during periods of high demand. The bill's sponsor, Representative Roy Kloppenstein, said it's meant to help homeowners and small businesses save money while reducing the load on the power grid. An analysis from the Ohio Environmental Council estimates the program would generate between $34 and $100 million in savings for the utility system, depending on how many customers sign up for it.
Temporarily adjust home power use in small business. I don't hear any data center being mentioned there, right? And that's my issue. Is like we don't have set any power demands or anything on these folks, and they get to just unlimitedly suck from the grid and make sure that everybody else power bills get to go up. No. We can't be having that, Ryan. And instead, like I said, I tweeted something in reaction to this data powers, and I said, hey, state legislators, wake up. You guys have huge amounts of authority. Dominion power, where I live, Virginia, legislators could come in and change the way. If you're going to consume 40% of power, I'm sorry, you got to be paying a hell of a lot more and making sure that there's some offset or whatever for consumers. And instead, what Virginia political expert was telling me was it's the inverse, where what's happening is that the legislators are all bought and paid for by Amazon, by Meta, Google, all these other people, and instead they're throwing incentives at the data centers because they're like, oh, we create all of these amazing jobs
like 12
for all the people who say, okay, yeah, it's great for the 1,000 people or whatever that work there, but what about the millions or so people that have to pay a higher power bill in a lot of these other places? So I think this is a major populist issue, which everybody is sleeping on. And again, if this were the railroads of the 1800s, it transformed America. Right? Undeniable. I get it. They were the villains of the time, etc. But fundamentally, they had a good value proposition. You used to have to take a wagon. Now you can go to California in a week. All right. That was a real thing. Telecom in the 90s, same thing. We could say a lot about how much of it was a bust. They overspent on fiber optics. They massively consumed amount of GDP to invest because they got a little too high on their own supply from the dot-com bubble. But that was a real thing. Fiber optic was a real thing.
Built an internet.
What is being built here, right? We have all these billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars that are being spent all for what? And that's the point where when you see what they're actually releasing, I'm sorry, who asked for this? And here's the new trailer from OpenAI about Sora 2.
And here's what you're paying for.
Video generator. This is what you're all paying for. Let's take a listen.
1 year ago, Sora 1 redefined what was possible with moving images. Today, we're announcing the Sora app, powered by the all-new Sora 2. It's the most powerful imagination engine ever built. And it's packed with new features. I'll pass it to Bill for more details.
Now every video comes with sound.
Wow, so cool. New images. And by the way, you know what the funny thing is? One of the very first images, Ryan, and videos that was released on Sora was this. Let's just play this. What we saw was immediately Sora being used to create a surveillance-style video showing Sam Altman himself stealing GPUs at Target and being accosted by a security officer. I mean, I don't know. What do you think? It looks real-ish. Like I could probably tell it was AI. So you basically created Slop video, which will be used for YouTube Shorts and Instagram and all this other nonsense to do for scrolling purposes. And also you created a technology which makes it unironically possible so that surveillance video and deep fakes and all that other stuff could be immediately employed, let's say in a matter of crisis. Think about the Charlie Kirk thing, if this was around at that time. And you say, I have surveillance video showing Tyler Robinson doing X, Y, and Z. It would go massively viral. You and I know that.
Yeah.
So thank you for creating that. By the way, the amount of power, you know, if you have ChatGPT, I pay for ChatGPT, and even if you want to use it to create an image, it takes forever. You know why? Because it's a shit ton of, you know, CPU use and electricity and all that. It has to crunch through that. So what is the purpose of what we're being created here? The bull case is you have no idea all of the endless possibilities. It's like what? The destruction of Hollywood and creative industry to create like, you know, again, slop video, because that's where things are mostly trending right now.
Right, we don't need a video of an elephant going through a jazz swing.
Yeah, we don't need that.
We don't need that.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So the big tech platforms spent the 90s and 2000s and early 2010s basically destroying the news media and creating this new media where people just create stuff and share it with each other and don't trust any traditional sources of
Some benefits of that.
information. Some benefits we're going to find out might be some downsides to that.
Some downsides
as well.
Yeah.
And now that nobody trusts anything and there's no real traditional news media left, they're going to make it so that everybody can just make, you know, authentic looking fake videos. And in order to do that, they're going to destroy as much of the Amazon as they can and build data centers all over the United States, triple or quadruple your electric bill. And yeah, like for that, the question for what is a key one. Chris and I had on an author yesterday who was like, oh, the purpose of this, whether it's intended or not, is it's going to kill everybody. So there's like that. And it is true that a lot of people in the AI world are like, yeah, there's a 20% chance of an existential event as a result of this. It's like,
I
oh,
don't
you say 20,
really,
but even
I don't believe that.
I hope it's just slop.
Yeah.
And that it plateaus out at slop. That's my hope.
That's what I think. I mean, I think this is the end state. Like, this is the reality, is if you look at the way that, by the way, how are they even paying for all of this, you know, AI data center? Where does it come from?
Yeah,
Scrolling,
investor bubbles.
algorithm, that's it. You know, massive amounts of screen time, addiction, period. Twitter, Facebook, they all have the same business model. It's just spend as much time on platform as possible, sell as many ads as possible. That's it. And so that's how they're paying for this, for the AI data centers, for the project, with the hope that you get artificial general intelligence. But the end state seems pretty simple. AI, to the extent that it's used in the workplace, is for shit that nobody thought is game-changing. Oh, it summarized my emails. Awesome. Summarize my note taking. You know, I've talked previously, because I actually know people who work in like really big corporations. And I'm like, tell me about how you use AI. They're like, oh, it's great. We cut out the entry-level workers. I was like, so that's it? And they're like, yeah, that's it. You know, we use Microsoft Teams, lets me summarize my notes, and then we send that for an agenda. Somebody who was entry level used to have to do that before. And I was like, but you're still having the meetings, you're still doing it. Or like, oh yeah, it hasn't changed any actual decision making.
Right, just fired a bunch of 24-year-olds.
To be fair, let's say in coding and in technology is a little bit different, right? You can actually have AI. I think AI is quite good at coding up to like 94, 95%, and doing a lot of the previously more difficult or like the time consuming work, leaving time for creative. Great. Okay, but I don't yet see evidence of like a massive game-changing thing, which doesn't just lead to the tech power law distribution, which makes a bunch of people in Silicon Valley a lot richer. Because instead, what's happened is that AI has led to mostly job loss or not really real job growth, while they're still pumping all this money into the industry. Plus the data center question, it just leads to this thing where like, what are we all doing here? You know, for what? And I don't think people understand, if it were not for AI data center spend, GDP would be contracting.
Right.
The only reason that we have increasing GDP
we're
numbers,
in a recession.
Otherwise, you're exactly right. Yeah. And the data bears all of this out. We've played it here on the show many times before. Is without the data center capital expenditure from the technology industry, there is no GDP growth. And in fact, I was just reading this morning, one of the consequences of the 1990s telecom boom, like the amount of money that went into that, is that what private capital all understood in the 90s, there's only one way to return money in the middle of a mania or a craze, is to invest in the mania or the craze. That has a huge opportunity cost, because what it meant in the 90s was that small businesses that are doing traditional manufacturing were not going to get capital expenditure and or any investment. All private investment was chasing the same thing. At the same time of the 1990s, what happened? The end of the Cold War, NAFTA, PNTR with China, which means not only did they get the reduced amount of money that they should have been owed absent the AI or the telecom boom, they also face growing international competition. Well, I think we're in a very similar thing right now. You have all of this money, stock, everything, the whole S&P 500. The government shuts down and the S&P 500 goes up. What? Why? Because of NVIDIA, right? You know, you're looking at these stock valuations and everything. None of it makes any sense. And then at the same time, with the Trump administration's trade policy, what you have is a chilling on domestic investment in manufacture, which means, again, any money in the economy that people have to spare is just going towards this AI. So I know this is kind of tedious, but there are serious implications for all of us, not just in terms of, let's say you own a small business, you wanted to buy a new tractor or whatever, and you're owned by private equity. Well, private equity doesn't have a lot of incentive to make sure that you're buying a bunch of new construction equipment. They would much rather go in and invest in some AI startup or something like that. That's a real effect. And then add the Trump trade stuff on top of that. It's a real problem.
Yeah, and when that bubble pops, because even the like Zuckerbergs of the world think that the bubble will pop. Their argument is that it'll pop and it will be like the railroads and it'll be like the telecoms, that it will have left behind.
Yes. The infrastructure you can build something on top of.
So the bubble pops, you bunch of people get washed out. Zuckerberg, as he said, that'll create a lot of opportunity to buy assets at low cost. So he continues to then concentrate his market power, and then builds it up from there. But that's Zuckerberg and others are baking in a financial crisis as like an inevitable result, just a when, not if.
Financial crisis means nothing to somebody worth 150 billion, right? 150 and 75
it means something.
Means
it means cheaper assets to buy.
Well, yeah. Good, great point. If you're worth 150 billion,
workers.
even if you go in half to 75, that means nothing to you. If you are 100,000 and you go to 75,000, that means a lot to you, right? Okay, so like that's the point that these people never seem to quite understand, is that the people who suffer from these financial bubbles are not the people who cause them in the first place. By the way, our producer Griffin has been flagging some of this weird Hollywood stuff to us. Let's go ahead and put these up here on the screen. So there is now a new AI director. The Italian producer Andrea Iervolino has unveiled a feature helmed by a virtual auteur. And what it does is that the Fellini AI would be housed inside of his company, which would act as a, quote, human-in-the-loop supervisor and producer who guides and monitors the technology. And, quote, you can imagine a future in which only 1% of humanity still works, transforming labor into a symbolic ritual, while the rest of the population lives in the freedom and leisure produced by machines. The logline states for this new AI-produced movie that the last workers become the final masks of a humanity that resists the insolence of labor. I don't know, Ryan. I'm not so bought into some sort of Matrix-style fantasy. And then on the right there, you see that they talk about the Hollywood AI is ready to crush Hollywood as we have known it with these AI actors.
Like a fake actress who's going to get an agent, and
that's where I just don't even I can't even really understand what it all means, because they say we may not even have real movie stars anymore. We'll soon have computer-generated actors, aspirational celebrities. That is the future currently imagined by the founder of this AI actor. And what they said is that in this new lab, they're hyper-real digital stars. The actresses said that they would produce sketch video and maybe signing to a future talent agency. Basically, their likenesses would be controlled by some sort of corporate conglomerate, and that they would then be featured in movies and licensed to different commercials and stars. This is basically an erasure of humanity as we know it. And it's one of those where The Matrix was, I guess, a documentary. And also, though, the government and the level of skepticism that is required is not happening. Because I said on the state level, it seems by my immediate perusal that most state legislators think data centers are a good thing because of money, right? Because they're getting donated to and because they give them these fake statistics. But I think the people, at the very least, are deeply skeptical of whatever the hell all of this is. So I just wonder if there can ever be any sort of democratic pushback. The technology companies are betting that they can leap so forward before any skepticism happens that they can just get there before anybody really wakes up to what's going on.
Yeah, and when you think about the arc of all of kind of Earth history, and you know, people say that we're now in the midst of the sixth great extinction, like, you know, the sixth mass die-off around the world.
I've seen people say that, yeah.
And statistically, like, it's accurate. Like, so many different species, both plant and animal, are dying off, and scientists can demonstrate that it is because of humanity. Like, we gobble everything up. And so when you think about that in a moral sense, which is difficult to do because it's like species are often amoral, you have to think about it in a moral sense because humans are the first ones that have to invent morality. And so you think about, okay, the costs to the Earth have been existential to thousands upon thousands of species. But it has produced what humanity can produce, which is love, which is art, you know, Shakespeare as a stand-in. Like, those developments represent a break from what existed before the other 5 extinctions. Now we're not even going to have that. Like, what is humanity bringing to the Earth other than misery and despair if we're not producing more Shakespeares?
I agree with you. I'm with you. This is what the fundamental, like, anti-humanness of it is something that's very concerning to me. I also am just concerned at the lack of interest that legislators and others have in any of what's going on right now. And in particular, they seem instead to just be bought and paid for and just waiting for something to happen before we all have to grapple with it. So anyway, yeah, we're all paying higher electricity bills so that Sora can generate slop videos for kids to be addicted on TikTok and YouTube Shorts in the future. What a great investment for us all.
Awesome.
All right, let's get to Qatar, shall we? Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.